Folks, I'm going to invite up Dan Friedman, executive editor of The Forward, and please welcome Rana Abu Fraiha.
So we're gonna. It's quite late, and we're gonna get straight into it. But it was so moving. When did you finish filming that?
And the movie went out in 2017. I'm continuing to filming all the time. It's part of my life.
Right, the movie never ends. It's all about identity.
For me, actually, it's really important, not because of the logos, but this one. Yeah.
There was another nice credit as well that you credit your father for archives as well.
Yeah. Of course.
That's nice. So how long did you? There's so much to talk about. It's so rich, but let's talk a little bit about the practicalities. So your mum in the film, she says, this is a family matter. It's intimate. So tell us a little bit about how you started filming, how you did film it, how the family felt.
Yeah. I guess if I'm thinking about the identity issues or the complexity of our life situation, it began really, really early, before the camera, came to our house. The camera took it to another level, but I guess that.
So when did the camera arrive? So when's that?
Yeah. So it was when I started my studies. Growing up in Omer, I've been into like a childhood that I was thinking about these differences a lot and the otherness that I felt during childhood also. But in the studies, it was my first time, getting out of Omer. And I started to think about stuff differently. And I still felt that no matter which group I'm in, I don't really feel 100% belong.
Right. So I think your dad uses the phrase "rochtim be'emtza." You're dancing in the middle.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that I'm frustrated all day or lonely, but still I don't feel like I can't find my place, in society. So I came back home really angry, actually. It all started from a very, frustrated place. And I wanted to ask my mother, what did you do? what was, your choices, and how am I supposed to live your choices now? And the camera was in my house, it wasn't a new thing to start filming, because my father really filmed a lot. But I started to film other stuff. I started to look, on the daily dynamics, and not only holidays and ceremonies. And the camera gave me a lot of courage to just starting even asking my mother those questions and to confront her about it. And I guess, a few years into this process, I understood that I might had another reason to be there, and it was because she was ill. I didn't know it at the beginning. She was ill for 10 years. And I might have, I searched for an excuse to just, first of all, be there, and then to ask her questions before it was too late.
So she was ill before you left for your studies?
I grew up into this disease. Yeah, I was 12 or 13 when it started. Yeah.
That's hard. So and so when you came back and you started, so you had these questions, you had this anger, you used the camera to get into these things. So your mum, occasionally tells you to stop filming and tells you it's into. But tell me more about how your mother felt about it. Clearly, your father has this background in filming, like he's a quiet guy, he's in the background everywhere. But like, what about your sisters and your brothers and?
It was a really long process, 7 years overall to making this film, and the cameras it started to be like a regular thing in the house, and I didn't ask him actually. But it wasn't, I didn't start it because I wanted to make a movie. I studied architecture at first, and for me it was like a therapy tool. It gave me at first courage, but then, when we film somebody who is close to us, we start looking at him differently. And I understood my mother and my father much better. And I got closer to them, and I feel now that maybe they understood as parents, that this is my way to be there, and this is my way to be present, but also like to get closer to them. As directors, we need to love our characters very much. And when I started to really watch the materials, I needed to understand my mother and to let her, enough room to experience her thoughts and the stuff that she wanted to say. So it makes the relationship much more powerful, I guess.
Yeah. No. I mean, I definitely felt like it's interesting that you were studying architecture, and your father is an engineer, and then you went into the filming, which is also his love, and this is just a beautiful love story to your mother, and so as a father,
to him also.
I think to him as well, but I think
yeah.
as a father, I definitely felt like that you loved him, and through him became to understand her through that, and felt how she had carried him in that conversation you have over the table. It's like he says, I get to paraphrase, he says, I did this and I came to terms with it. It wasn't my choice, but I came to terms with it. And throughout this, you have this power, this dreamer, your mother, and she has this that incredible speech about the 5 rooms, and there's this poetry that she has, and the dream and the drive, and you come to that through him and from him, and now you're trying to live the outcome of that. And live that in a place where you're trying to rotem be'emta, you're trying to dance in the middle in a place that is so. Omer is the most Zionist place in the world, the most Ashkenazi place in the world, and now it stands for Israel. That is saying you can't do this. So we're trying to come through to in a very short space of time. Like how do you feel? You're living her dream. You're educated. The film is your graduation gift to her as well.
Well, I'm not dancing in the middle now.
Right.
I feel like I really found my place, but still I'm keep looking, I'm keep searching, and I feel like identity is something that is constantly on the move. Like I have to, for me, my life situation made me kind of forced me to ask those questions, but I feel like everybody should do it. And my mother, if I think about identity, she moved through so many social culture, circles in her life. At first, she grew up in Jat, which is a Muslim village, and then on high school, she studied in a monastery. So it was all her friends were Christians, and she studied everything in English. So this period, I think, had a lot of influence on her. And then she moved to the south, and then she moved to Omer. And I feel like, people and society, sometimes they want us to choose one and very specific identity, but I feel like my mother didn't want to really. And in fact, the time that she was most precise on what she wants to be, what she wants to say, was as death was approaching. Like she was living in this disease for 10 years, and if somebody knows here from personal place, it makes a person it changes the state of mind. Suddenly, all the unimportant issues just move aside, and you becoming, sadly, but very, very focused. And for her, the most important identity was the fact that she's a mother, that she's a mother to daughters, and how can she use her time here, which was very limited, in order to, kind of drawing us a path to walk on.
So I do want to give people a chance to ask questions, but I want to ask you one more question, because you said that you're no longer wrote the Emsa, you have found it, and I agree that...
Because, in terms of identity also, like I searched for a specific slot, for a very long time, and I asked myself the question, also I did like art about it, but if I can call myself Palestinian or Bedouin or Israeli. Many years I've been in this Arab-Israeli spot, which is very anemic, and just don't shoot at me. And now I'm not there.
Except with a camera.
But I always search for something much more, vast. And I feel like, talking, if I think about losing my mother and people who have lost their parents, especially mothers, we are connected in some extra level, we know something about the world that people who didn't experience it don't really know yet. And it's, I always search for the kind of common ground that we can share. And I feel like the movie does it also, in some point at the movie, you stop thinking about Bedouins, Arab, Jews, you just entering like a family story, and it's a story about a family separating from a mother. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I wake up to the world that my mother is not here physically. So this is the identity for me, that it's much more powerful, and like on daily basis than. And nationality is very important, but I don't feel like it's supposed to kind of limit me. Yeah.
No, I definitely. My grandmother had a cancer for 10 years, and definitely, there were moments in that where the intimacy that we shared was very similar to that, and that's even like at a one remove from that, and so I found it very moving. I think that I could talk to Rana for hours, and I presume that you also have many questions. So, yeah.
There's what.
Hi there. So.
She wants to.
I was curious about two things. One is you filmed this over a long period of time. At what point did some kind of story emerge for you? Because it really hung together well. And it did. I don't know if you started off thinking this is going to be a tribute to your mother. And the other thing that really struck me was just so beautiful and so painful. And I just wanted to comment on the scene with the father and the honor killing. Is that something that still goes on? How is that?
Yeah. So again, I didn't know I'm going to make a movie, so it was kind of like a mental need to just document a lot. So we ended up in the editing room with 400 hours of filming. So it was crazy and very, very hard to edit this film. And we had so many directions we could go. But this process, especially after the death of my mother, I worked for 3 years after her death. And it was totally connected to my grieving process. So even if at first I didn't know it's going to be a tribute to her, it kind of like through the process we started like understanding together, because me and my amazing editor and producer, that this is my kind of funeral and my way to say goodbye, especially the fact that we haven't been as a family in the funeral. I understood it very, very, long after, but I understood that the big, like an open wound that I'm walking around with. And it was a way to deal. So yeah, I understood it, through the process. And about the honor killing, I was totally afraid of putting it inside the movie. I was, at first I felt like I'm not going to even show my father this scene. But then I felt like it's super important also because I can't say every girl, but most of the girls that I know that come from Arab society inside of Israel, we grow up with this fear, whether it's reality or not. We grow up with this fear that if you're a woman and you go not to the right direction, something bad can happen. And it can be killing, but it can be something else. And I really wanted to touch this fear. And I'm so privileged with my father, that he was able to, first of all, talk about it in front of the camera. And, he's not feeling comfortable at all. But the fact that this scene is on the movie, and on the screen, it's really important. And also when I go and screen the film inside the Arab society in Israel, it's something that we talk about. So yeah, it happens, and it's really something that we have to stop, and it has so many reasons, It's also many patriarchal codes inside the Arab society, which I feel like we are in a progress, and stuff are changing, but also the state they don't really deal with this kind of crimes. It's my thought. I don't know if it's right or not, but I feel like it's very convenient to keep one society, especially minority, especially Arab minority, in kind of like lower conditions, and not really check and not really practice the police is not really checking this stories. So yeah.
And I think in the context of the film as well, it explains why your mother is so adamant to get out of Tel Sheva, that she doesn't want, she can't have daughters. She doesn't want to be there. She doesn't want her daughters to be there. And so even when she just yells at your dad for having I think unfairly for having a Bedouin mentality in that particular moment, like you're thrown back to his admission of like, yeah, these things kind of do happen.
But I feel like also, my mother and my father, they don't come from the same society. We say Arab society, but inside we have many groups, and they are not at the same class inside the society. And my mother says she did a really good job in scaring me also from my Bedouin identity, which now I can really observe this. And I feel like for me, I wanted to touch also this subject about the group inside the minority, and the fact that we have like internal racism. And for example, when I go to the Arab society, it's very hard film to watch because of my mother criticism. And somebody can, identify with what she says because he knows it from home, but still to watch it on the screen, it's really, it gets you angry. But for me, it was really important to also do kind of an internal criticism about ourselves and about the split between all these groups inside. Yeah.
Right. And then if you watch the film again, when you do watch the film again, because you surely will do, the opening scene is a very different thing to watch the second time round. Next question. Yes.
A question over there.
Hi.
Yes. A comment before the question. Thank you. There are Jewish principles of Darchei Shalom, ways of peace, that govern burial across lines of diversity, and I'm heartbroken that they were not put into play in Omer.
Thank you.
My question is, there was mention of Menucha Nechona early on in the film, and that this is Israel's alternative cemetery, and it was mentioned that it was not far from where your family was.
Yeah.
But it didn't seem like that was on the table as an option, and I was wondering about that.
Yeah. First of all, thank you. I hear a lot that this was totally an option, to find another solution. I hear it from rabbis that watch the movie, and I feel like it wasn't really something that was from the reason of religion. Many people use religion in order to just shut things down, and I don't feel like it was the real reason. It just really. It's something that scare people maybe to really share and a space and to share life and death together. And what does it mean that if we start letting Muslims here to to lay down in the ground? So thank you for that.
If we start burying Muslims here, then more will come to. I think.
Yeah. But yeah, so it was something that we thought about. But at first we were very naive. We thought that Omar will be the solution. And when we understood that Omar is not an option, which we didn't get a direct answer from the city hall. It was a misunderstanding, and we need to figure it out. And then the dilemma shifted to something else, to how are we going to cope with the social codes inside the Arab society. And all our even extended families wanted my mother to be buried in Tel Sheva, and she kept saying I'm not going to be there because she felt she's not from this society, and she doesn't have stuff, she wasn't connected to the society in terms of identity. So we had the situation of mostly all the men of our family are inside our home fighting, and we had to find a solution before it's too late. And it was, we didn't know if it's tomorrow, in 2 days, or in few weeks. So to think about Menucha Nechona at this point, it was totally out of context, and it was something that we felt we can't really argue about in front of the family. And also Bagatz, also the Supreme Court, yeah. And I feel now that if we went to the Supreme Court, maybe we could win. But still, Menucha Nechona, which is a wonderful thing that we have in Israel, it's private, so you need to pay much more. And when you're a resident, inside of a place, you pay for this kind of we pay we pay taxes in this place, so we're supposed to get this rights. And also it doesn't solve the fact that she wanted to be buried inside, her home, or what she called her home. So yeah, this is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the conflict between the place that she has chosen to be and the life that she's chosen to lead and the culture she's chosen to embrace, and all those amazing home movies of you all singing all the Zionist songs and stuff, and she's chosen to be there, and then you have on the phone
she didn't choose to be there because of the Zionism or the Judaism. She and my father, they faced the situation that many Arab families are kind of forced to face with. That where we're going to send the children to study, because there's a big gap between the education in the Jewish society and the Arab society. And as parents, they wanted us to be everything, and they had to make a radical choice, and they didn't know what's going to be the outcome. But yeah.
And then at the end, is it Shimon or someone in the council says, in the end, I have to decide who is going to be allowed to be buried in my town.
In my town.
And
actually, the law in Israel, they allowed this. Yeah. It's supposed to happen.
Hi, Rana. Thank you for sharing your mother with the world.
Thank you.
2 questions. Have you or would you show this in Omer? And is there one question you wish you would have asked your mother that you didn't?
What do you think about Omer? Yes or no? Well, totally no. I tried many times. Yeah. Omer, Tel Sheva, Jat. I haven't screened the movie yet. And I tried with all these places. I feel in my gut that Tel Sheva would be the first one to embrace the movie someday, because it's already 1 year and a few months. But yeah, I tried many times, and many people from almost saw the movie, and I kind of it's not the same, the people and the city hall for me. But every time we tried, something stopped in the middle of the process, and I don't know what's the real reason, but I feel like either somebody is really stopping it, or people are afraid. My teachers from high school, they wanted me to come to screen the movie, and we talked about it, and then they said, well, it's an election year, maybe we'll wait. And again, after 30 years, he's again the mayor. People don't like change. And my mother, and I want to say something about Omer, but because I really feel like the people are different, because, you know, one-on-one we can have wonderful conversations, but still, like, the environment and the feeling inside this kind of a place, which have many similarities in Israel, and I feel like also in the West, it's like we love the other, we love the different, we hug them, and we're kind of embracing your culture. Your coffee is very great, and, you know, my mother and my father used to kind of bring coffee to everything in the kindergarten and school. My mom used to cook the dough, batzek, for Lag BaOmer. But I feel like, you know, it's all words and kind of theory, but, you know, in practice, it's not happening. You know, otherness has no place in this kind of a space, and I feel like it happens in many places that, you know, the society is so homogenic. And for me, it's very important that people from Omer will see it, but it's also kind of a study case to other places. And my mother, well, many things, but especially because I made this movie, you know, in my first half of between 20 and 30, and I was so curious about her experience in these ages, and I felt like, oh, we didn't talk about, you know, romance or how did it go with your heart in this age, and this thing I miss a lot when I watch this scene of what her dream was. I was in a totally scared place in these ages, and I didn't really said, you know, many stuff about this experience. I asked her many questions, but I didn't really share. So this I miss, yeah.
We have time for one last question down here.
Hi.
Hi.
When I saw that there was going to be a film about Omer in this festival, I got all excited because my best friend Sandy lives on Rehov HaGefen Sheish in Omer.
Close to my old house, yeah.
And I spent a week with her this past August in Omer.
So it's really next to Tel Sheva, like you can see Tel Sheva from there.
Yes. Yeah. How far is where your mother was buried from Omer?
Hour and a half driving.
Oh, so it's really far. Are there a lot of other Bedouins that live in Omer?
When we moved, one other family moved at the same year. And the interesting thing is that we were two families in the entire place, two Bedouin families, for at least 15 years, and we didn't, communicate that much. I guess we felt. You have more questions?
Yeah, I wanted to know, now she lost my train of thought. Her husband died a year ago, and the first anniversary of his death is this Friday, and I've been to the Omer Cemetery. And I didn't know how the story was going to end, and I was hoping that you would have been able to bury your mother there, and I'm sorry you weren't able to.
But I will say about your last question that so I guess we we shared the same fear of getting close to each other, the both families, because they both did this radical, step, and we felt that also they're a family, all girls. There are 4 girls, and you start to be kind of afraid from gossip and what people can say to each other. But now and after 15 years, others started to move. Not many. I guess now it's like 12 families, and Omer is not really. It's not really a place that accepts the people from this culture. But now I kind of מחדשת, help me, renewed my relationship with people that study with me, especially Bedouins, and because I feel like we have so much to share. We're not living the really same situation, but still we have many stuff to share from this time of high school, and the film opened this journey up for me.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for sharing everything.
Thank you. If somebody wants to say something, I'm here.
Rana, I was just going to add that when we started this festival 12 years ago, we wanted to tell human stories that showed the Arab minority in Israel outside of the political context and just outside of the headlines. And you brought us there in such a beautiful way. So thank you so much.